Order. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call Public Bills Committee for March 26th, 2026 to order, and I'll welcome everyone to One Government Place. My name is Scott Armstrong, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, and I will be the chair for today's meeting. I'll ask each of the members of today's Public Bills Committee to identify themselves for the record. We'll start with government members.
Good morning, Tom Taggart, MLA for Colchester North.
Good morning, Diane Timmons. I'm MLA for Victoria the Lakes.
Ryan Robichaud, MLA for Clare.
Julie Van Exen, MLA for King South.
Good morning, Derek Mumbercat, MLA for Sydney Member 2.
Good morning, Kendra Coombs, MLA for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Pier.
Good morning, Paul Wozni, MLA for Sackville Cobequid, and I use he, him pronouns.
I'll ask members of Legislative Council to now introduce themselves as well.
Gordon Hebb, Counsel to the Committee.
Aaron Fowler, Legislative Counsel.
To start, I'd like to address some housekeeping items. I'll ask that everyone in the room please turn off your phone or put it on silent.
That's what I was trying to do.
In case of emergency, please use the Granville Street exit and walk up to Grand Parade. I'll ask that anyone in attendance remain respectful to avoid indicating approval or disapproval for what is being said and to refrain from any disorderly behavior. Anyone exhibiting disorderly behavior may be asked to leave. Taking pictures or videos in the room is restricted to accredited media only. Finally, presenters are not to use any props. The agenda for today, listing in order which presenters will be provided to speak, is available for viewing at the far table here to my left. All presenters were required to provide prior notification to Legislative Office that they were speaking on the bill. We will proceed from that list. All submissions on a bill are received via email until the time the bill is reported back to the House or in person at the Public Bills meeting will be given to library staff and will be posted online. Submissions received after a bill has been reported back to the House are distributed electronically to members of the committee but are not posted on the website. When your name is called, please come forward, state your name and how you would like the committee to address you and the organization, if any, you represent. In order to allow all of the scheduled presenters to speak, we will be keeping track of time. Each presenter will receive a set amount of time to make your remarks, followed by answering any questions posed by committee members for up to 5 minutes. I will alert you when 1 minute is left in your speaking time and when your time is up. Today, each presenter will receive 5 minutes to present and followed by 5 minutes of questions from MLAs. If presenters have handouts for the committee, please hand them to the pages for distribution. Each committee member may ask one question at a time per presenter with no follow-up. If there is extra time afterwards, I will allow a second question. I'd like to remind presenters and committee members that you need to be recognized by the chair before you speak so your mic is on and your comments will be captured. The bill we're examining today is Bill 198, the Financial Measures Act. At the moment, we are having a hard time contacting our first witness, so we will take a short recess until we can line her up. Thank you. We're good.
No word yet.
Order. Welcome back to Public Bills. We have our first witness for today. Could you please identify yourself, indicate any organization you're representing? Following that, you will have 5 minutes to make a presentation, and after that, there'll be 5 minutes of questions from MLAs. The floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Liliona Quarman. I wear many hats, but for the purposes of this introduction, I will say that I'm the Artistic Director of Live Art Dance.
Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
So, Live Art Dance. We're the largest dance presenter east of Quebec City. Being a presenter means that we ourselves are not creating new pieces of work. As a presenter, our role is to be part of the circulation of dance. We take pieces of work that have already been created and share them with audiences. So Live Art Dance has been active here in Chibouctouc for over 40 years, engaging with hundreds of thousands of audience and community members. We present an annual series of diverse dance works from local, national, and international dance artists, and we are a critical organization in the arts infrastructure of this province, an infrastructure this government claims to value. Prior to the tabling of the so-called Defending Nova Scotia budget, Live Art Dance was on the verge of growth with the upcoming launch of an annual festival. Our pilot session was to be in May of this year, with the inaugural festival launching in May of 2027. This festival would have been a huge step forward for dance and for the arts in this province. It would have raised the profile of dance of Nova Scotia on the national and international scene and contributed to both the export and import of art into and out of the province, increasing what is already hugely strong economic activity in Nova Scotia. I'm sure by now you know the impact that arts and culture have on the economy. But with the proposed cuts that are on the table and are tied to Bill 198, the dreams of Live Art Dance's festival are going up in smoke. Overnight and without warning, our vital organization has gone from dreaming of growing dance in this province and in the city to struggling how to figure out how to make it through the next few months. So that's my Live Art Dance hat. In addition to being Live Art Dance's artistic director, I'm also an independent dance and theatre artist, which means I'm employed by various other arts organizations, such as Rooted Dance Projects, Zupa Theatre, and Neptune Theatre. As a matter of fact, when I leave this room, I'll be going to rehearsal for Neptune Theatre's Come From Away. Arts organizations already operate on shoestring budgets, and employees often rely on work outside of their organizations to make ends meet. Yes, I'm employed by Live Art Dance, but I also desperately need my income from other organizations to keep my head above water. The people who run one organization supplement their income with employment from another organization, and that organization relies on partnership with a third organization, and that organization relies on its own partnership with a community organization, and so on. So, when things fall apart for one organization, the knock-on effects are huge. So we're not exaggerating when we say that the proposed cuts to the arts and culture sector are devastating. The government is complaining that we're yelling and screaming, but would you not do the same if your entire way of being was suddenly thrown into chaos? And yes, we are yelling and screaming. You may recognize my face. I've been on that soapbox in front of the legislature over the past few weeks. But we are also trying to have conversations. We have questions that deserve answers. How can the government justify drastically cutting revenue without consultation in some areas when the effects on the lives of Nova Scotians are this severe? How is this defending Nova Scotia? On one last personal note, I'd like to say that I'm also an immigrant. People often look at me and assume that I'm African Nova Scotian. Shout out to the 52 historic African Nova Scotian communities. But that's not actually the case. I'm from Ghana and the Philippines. When I moved to Canada, I went initially to Montreal, but in 2009, my husband and I chose to continue building our lives and raising our 2 children here.
You have a minute left.
We were privileged enough that we could have gone to many places, but we chose to come here. First to Antigonish, where my husband continues to work, and now here in Chibouctouc. One of the reasons my husband and I chose to be here is because we believed that Nova Scotia was somewhere where people could be their full selves. My 2 children, one is a performer and one is a deeply scientific thinker. Both my children deserve to follow their passions. My son with his mathematical mind and his daughter who loves to act, both deserve to be supported. I refuse to live in a province that says to my children that one of them has a way of living in the world that is more valuable to the other. I don't think that's the messaging we want to send to the children of our province. I thank you for your time this morning. I apologize for my tardiness. I've shared my thoughts with you despite the sense that this process is somewhat performative. I must ask, if the government was serious about listening to Nova Scotians, would they have gone through with passing the budget as it did yesterday, prior to the concluding of the public bills process? Would the Premier still be in Texas instead of in the province, listening to the only opportunity Nova Scotians have to speak directly to the legislation as it affects our lives?
So your time is up, so thank you very much. We have questions from MLAs. The first question, MLA Taggart.
Thank you, Chair, and I certainly appreciate you being here, and certainly interested in your I should, interest is not the right word, but appreciate culture and dance and what you do. I guess what I want to know, because we're talking about the live art dance, I forget what you called it, but there's a theater or a weekend or whatever festival. Can you tell me the history of funding for that?
So the
Well, just,
festival...
I just have to indicate you so your comments will be captured. So,
Thank you.
Liliana, go ahead.
Yes. So the festival is a new initiative, or was to be a new initiative. So Live Art Dance has been running a season. So that means that we have been presenting work over the course of every year. We bringing in artists from outside as well as presenting local artists. So the festival was to be a new event that would bring together dance programming in a concerted week of activities around dance that would be in addition to our current programming.
Thank you. MLA Wozni.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Bill 198, its principal role is to kind of capture changes to legislation that impact, revenue, how the government collects it, from what sources, sets tax rates, sets fines and levies and things like that. But philosophically, it shifts the burden of revenue away from big corporate entities and further onto the shoulders of struggling Nova Scotians. And that comes at the cost of funding for organizations like yours. I'm wondering if you can talk about the economic impact of a festival like the one that is no longer possible because of this bill and its relationship to the budget.
Just hang on. Liliana, go ahead.
The economic impacts would have been huge. One of the things that was to be done as part of our pilot session with funding from CCTH was that we were going to do modeling with exact numbers, but of course a festival with its we're attracting audience. That audience is going to restaurants. They're staying at hotels. They're going to other events. They're going on the Halifax Harbor Hopper, and they're doing all those things. So of course there's a huge level of economic activity that is being generated through the festival, and we would have started small and then grown so that we would be an annual festival that eventually, 10 years in the future, would have been 2 full weeks of full dance programming in the province.
MLA LaChance.
Hi, and just for the benefit, I'll just introduce myself, Lisa LaChance, MLA for Halifax, Citadel, Sable Island. And so you talked about the ecosystem and how things are connected, and that's one of the things that I guess I've been hearing so much about, right, is that like because of this 20% cut in one organization and this 30% cut, like the possibilities for partnership are limited. Could the government have done a better job of this? Say, not have decided to cut sectoral cuts, a month before the fiscal year started, and and I've been hearing about their tourism seasons are starting too.
Liliana, there's about a minute left.
Yes. So yes, absolutely. I mean, these proposed cuts came very last minute. Most of us are well into season planning for the next year, and we have had the rug ripped out from right under us without any warning. As I said earlier, it means that we aren't even sure. We're struggling to figure out how to get to the end of July. That is how tightly things are run for arts organizations. So if there are to be cuts, which obviously I don't support in any way, but it's made even worse that these cuts have happened with so little notice and no time to prepare.
Great, thank you very much. The time for questions from MLAs has expired. We'll move on to our next witness. We're going to revert back to witness number 1, which is virtual. It will be Andrea Arbeck. Thank you. Andrea, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me? Sorry.
We can. Are you going to be turning your camera on, or are you just going to?
Yeah. Yes, I will. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to preserve my bandwidth and.
Not a problem.
All right. Apologies. Just give me 1 second, and I will. I'm currently in Ontario, so a bit blurry. There we go. Oops.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in from Ontario. Please just identify how you'd like to be referred to, any organization you're representing, if any. Following that, there'll be 5 minutes for a presentation, followed by questions from MLAs.
Great.
The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So my name is Andrea Arbeck. I'm a resident of Nova Scotia. I'm not representing any group this morning. The views I'm expressing are my personal views and not those of any group with which I am affiliated.
Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Great. So I wanted to address Bill 198 as it pertains to the loss of revenue and the impact on heritage. When I heard that the decision had effectively been finalized with the approval of the budget yesterday, I questioned whether or not I should, spend my time, waste my time and your time speaking to the subject this morning. However, I decided that not speaking, would just feed into what I see as some anti-democratic tendencies with this process, and a lack of consultation with Nova Scotians and a willingness to listen to Nova Scotians about these subjects. So despite the fact that the budget has been approved and what I'm about to say will not really have any impact, I want to exercise my opportunity to make my views known anyway. One of the government's justifications for shutting down 12 of Nova Scotia museum sites was that Nova Scotia has more museum sites than any other province. To the government's mind, this seems to be a liability, but to people like me and hundreds of thousands of visitors to these museums every year, the Nova Scotia Museum's multiple sites, which tell the stories of rural and urban communities across the province, are an enormous asset and a unique feature of this province. In fact, this decentralized museum site was one of the reasons that I came to this province in the first place, to do an internship for a Master of Museum Studies degree. And it's a decision that ultimately led me to make Nova Scotia my home. So despite the fact that this is already a done deal, I would still like to remind the government that when the province of Nova Scotia took ownership of those 12 museum sites, the province accepted a long-term fiduciary responsibility for maintaining the buildings and artifacts at those sites. By closing them, your government has broken a solemn trust with the people of Nova Scotia. You may have been able to justify your decision to close 12 Nova Scotia museum sites, 10 of which are provincially registered heritage buildings, by reassuring yourselves that the communities in which they are located will step into the breach and take over responsibility for running them. But if the provincial government says it can't afford to operate and maintain these sites, then I question how the mainly small rural communities in which they are located could possibly be expected to do so. The analogy that's been running through my head since I heard the announcement about the museum closures is one of parenthood. There are undoubtedly many times in every parent's life that they feel their children are just too expensive or, frankly, too much trouble. But parents do what they have to do to keep their children safe and to ensure their success, because that is their responsibility. They Don't simply walk away when things get too difficult and hope someone else will take care of their kids. This is exactly what this government has done. You have walked away from your responsibilities as custodians of Nova Scotia's cultural heritage. The buildings and artifacts of these 12 sites existed for generations before us, and they should be there for generations after all of us are gone, because they teach us about where we came from, what makes us who we are today, and what we can be in the future. However, as a result of your government's choices, the future of these culturally, educationally, and economically important sites is in peril. Your government inherited a surplus and it squandered it, reducing provincial revenues by millions of dollars through the removal of bridge and road tolls and reducing the HST, as well as by making billions of dollars in unbudgeted expenditures not approved by the legislature. This is a fiscal crisis of your government's own making, which you are now using as an excuse to cut funding to programs and assets that are vitally important to Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians should not have to pay the price for your government's financial mismanagement, yet we are being expected to do so as if somehow we deserve it. We do not have the kind of large-scale manufacturing or population base that other provinces have, but we do have that makes us distinct from other places.
You have about a minute
and what
left.
attracts people to live and visit here is our heritage, our arts, our culture, assets that for some reason this government has disproportionately targeted with this budget. So while you chase dreams of resource extraction and other unicorns, you have dealt a death blow to those assets that truly make this a special place to live. For that, your government will undoubtedly pay the consequences during the next election, but it is the people of this province and the irreplaceable cultural and heritage assets that you have targeted that will truly pay the price for your short-sighted decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. MLA Lachance.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned the fiduciary responsibility of government when it took on ownership of these local museums. And, you know, one of the things I've been struck by is there's been like a couple of like closing parties at some of the museums that are being closed because they are fixtures in the community, people have memories. So I wonder if you could just talk a bit about that fiduciary responsibility.
Just a second. This is Eric. Go ahead. I just have to indicate you for the microphone that you're on.
I understand.
Go ahead.
Apologies. Thank you. So yes, the province owns these assets, and so through agreements with donors, or the way that the sites were acquired over the years varies, of course, because they were acquired over many years. And you know, there are agreements, and there's a responsibility by saying, yes, donor, we will accept donation of this property, or we will buy this property, and we will take on operation of that site, and that there is a trust involved there, and to just essentially say, no, now can't afford it anymore, that is breaking a trust and an agreement. In some cases, there may be legal agreements in the sort of deep, dark recesses of the records. But in terms of the role in the community, in many cases, it used to be that the church was the center of the community. It was a gathering place, and that's changed a lot over the years. And now museums, especially in some of the most small communities, they're kind of the only visible provincial infrastructure. They are places where people gather. They're not just places of artifacts and exhibits as they were in the past. They're places of community conversation. They're places of community events. They're important community assets, you know, with which these communities will be worse off. Without which they will be worse off.
Very good. See no further questions. Oh, sorry, MLA Wozni.
Thank you for your presentation. It would have been last summer, but my wife and I had an opportunity to travel and see some friends we hadn't in a long time, and we actually visited. I guess it used to be an estate that came into government trust because the owners of the property could no longer keep it up, and basically the administration and governance of this estate sort of fell to a local museum. And really, it's a team of volunteers that ultimately have taken on the project of maintaining this former estate really as a site of not only historical interest, but it's become a prominent tourist attraction and a resource for sort of outdoor physical activity and recreation. I'm wondering if you can talk about the role of small Nova Scotia museums in this respect. It feels to me like museums are seen as sort of as a sunk cost. We just give them money and nothing comes back to the province through that expenditure. I'm wondering if you can talk about the economic impact of museums, particularly in small rural Nova Scotian towns.
Ms. Zerbeck.
Certainly, there are a variety of very positive impacts through employment, although the staff at many of these museums, they're small in numbers. They're communities where there aren't other employment opportunities, so even though some of the jobs are seasonal, without them, there'll be a loss of local employment. With respect to the kind of changing, there's the tourism impact. When it was announced that the province was shutting down sites, the first message I got was from a friend of British Columbia, and she said, "What's going on? What's with this?" She said, "When I visit the province, that's one of the things I always do. When I think of Nova Scotia, I think of culture and heritage, and without that, she said, I really won't feel the same way about the province." And so, there's a huge tourism impact. You mentioned recreational use, and I alluded to a little earlier the changing role of museums. And some people still have the image of them as being these dusty places with, someone who's taking care of a few artifacts, and the doors are locked and they don't really want anyone in. But that's really sort of an outdated image of museums. And they are community centers. They're places of recreation. They're places of education, of entertainment. Then there are links between culture and heritage to wellness. I mean, I know that the focus of the provincial government has very much been on health, but there are some very clear relationships between culture, heritage, and health. So if we're thinking about physical and mental well-being, there is a very direct connection. So there's economic, there is educational, and there are health benefits to these sites at a cost which is really very modest because, as you mentioned,
I'll have to ask you to finish up, Mr. Zerbeck.
Sure. Volunteers play a very big role in the operation of these museums, supplementing, making the government's dollars go much, much farther. And so, to my mind, it is a small investment that has outsized impacts.
Thank you very much. The time for MLA questions has expired. We appreciate you coming in today, particularly when you're away in Ontario. Hope you travel safely back soon. And we'll move on.
I hope to be back soon, too.
We'll move on to our next witness, Kim Smith.
Everybody.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming in. Sorry we're a little bit late. We had a slow start here.
It's all right. I'm gonna need a little water here to start.
Take your time. Welcome to Public Bills. Please introduce yourself, indicate any organization you are representing, if any. Following that, you'll have 5 minutes and then 5 minutes of questions from MLAs. Just want to remind witnesses that we're here to discuss Bill 198, the Financial Measures Act, not the budget. So if you could please at least link your comments to Bill 198, we'd appreciate it. Yeah. Go ahead.
My name is Kimberly Smith. I am speaking on my own behalf as a volunteer. I was made 2019 Volunteer of the Year for the County of Kings, and I volunteer with a number of organizations in our community. The primary one that I volunteer with is the Alexander Society for Inclusive Arts. And I thought it might be helpful if I share a personal story about my son, Brendan, who has a severe developmental delay. And this is a story about being careful about the consultants you trust. So when he was diagnosed by a very well-accomplished neurosurgeon, he was labeled with a global developmental delay, and he said he was going to be mentally challenged the rest of his life. This was in 1991 when this happened. And I kind of looked at him and went, No, he's not mentally challenged. He's mentally challenging. And that shift in perspective made a huge difference in our ability to prosper as a family. What it did is it made me curious. Instead of just writing him off as having no value, I went, wait a minute, there's something really going on here. So that's the first thing. That doctor turned out to be not quite helping out with his assessment of the situation. The other one was another expert who told us that he would not speak in his life if he didn't get his first words by the time he was 9. I can tell you truthfully that he made his first word when he was 21 years old. And that word he said with great effort, it was home. Home. And that moment was proof of a strategy that we had adopted from that early 1991 at diagnosis. He is mentally challenging, and all of the people that have been locked up in our big institutions, separated from the rest of our community, have robbed our communities of the opportunity to be innovative, to think differently, to challenge themselves to be better human beings. And so I really support the remedy fiercely. But here's another thing I learned over the years of having to deal with the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the Department of Community Services, the Department of Finance. They're siloed, and they don't talk to each other very well, and they don't consult families very well. I've been part of many public consults through the Department of Community Services where the community said very clearly what we needed to do, which is to bring the labeled people to the table when you're making crucial decisions about community. What's going on now with Bill 198 is a really good example of what happens when you don't consult properly with people. So, for instance, all of my helpers that I've volunteered with that have enabled us to create a good life in our community and contribute in a positive way happen to be the artists.
You have about a minute left.
Okay, I'll tie this up. So the big piece of this is that we are now legally obligated to fulfill the remedy. But one of the crucial pieces that enables us to do that successfully is a robust, strong social fabric. And the heritage and arts are an essential part of that. So when we're bringing people out of the institutions to integrate them into community, we need those people in our communities, making our communities strong. And instead of just having sort of yearly grant March Madness going on, they should be stable. That funding should be as stable as the blood going from my heart to every part of my body. It's really, really important. And we've seen this over and over in our work with the Alexander Society for Inclusive Arts, which is one of the organizations I support and volunteer with.
Great.
So,
Thank you. To cut you off there, it's time for questions from MLAs. However, sometimes MLAs allow you to finish. So, MLA Wozni.
I do have a question, but is there a thought that you would like to conclude before?
Well, one of the things that I did, I sent you 2 documents that were generated with AI systems. One of the other things I do in my work, I'm an independent media artist, and I also work with the film industry and the theater people, and I run a group that is exploring AI. I've been doing that for 7 years and following those systems. And so what I did in preparation for this meeting is I asked the systems to search our demographics and all our published data in Nova Scotia and ask it to assess Bill 198 based on evidence. And I gave you those documents. They were sent in an email. They're not perfect, but what it says to all deputy ministers working in all departments is you should be using these tools so that your work is clearer and more accurate and more liable to create the prosperity that we're all hoping for.
MLA Wozni.
Thank you. If I just want to be clear about what I think you're saying. We hear over and over again senior members of government iterate their commitment to the implementation of the remedy. I hear your support for it loud and clear. But it seems because Bill 198, technically in terms of adjusting taxes and revenues, et cetera, the deficit position of government seems to be driving these changes that defund arts programs. Are you saying that though the defunding of the arts needs to be seen through the lens of the remedy as a potential harm to individuals living with disabilities that diminish the autonomy that the remedy is intended to provide them?
Yes.
I have to indicate so your comments will be captured.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Mr. Smith.
Yeah, the answer to that question, in short, is yes. You have to imagine our communities in a holistic way. And so all of these arts activities actually help the social fabric. And I can tell you truthfully that my son, he's really challenging. He's nonverbal, he's fun, but he's really challenging. And the people who first embraced him in community were the Ross Creek Center for the Arts, Music and Communities, the Valley Community Learning Association, and most of the artists have been the first people to say, hey, come, be part of community. And that's been true throughout our whole life. And so by taking out those things in our communities, it's kind of putting us in legal jeopardy in the future, because if the remedy isn't fulfilled properly, that could lead to real trouble in terms of litigation, because we're obligated to socially integrate people, and if we don't have a healthy community fabric to integrate them into with people who are creative and willing to think outside the box, if we get rid of all of that, it's going to really jeopardize the success of the remedy. And the other piece of this, too, that's really important is often, and I've seen this, people who are disabled are viewed as a deficit or some sort of liability. But honestly, if we simply followed the law, for instance, treaty law, or followed I'd say follow them both, because if we do that, we take the little bit of money we have and we grow it. It's not about spending money that we don't have. It's about generating more financial wealth, but that is tariff-proof. For instance, with the remedy, they're going to be training new developmental support workers. So we're shifting from disability support workers to developmental support workers. And the shift there, and this is really important, it's going from a socially isolated one-on-one relationship with a disability person to actually being a bridge between that person and the rest of the community. So that activity not only is helping the individual through their developmental support, but it's helping the community through its developmental support, and the community grows capacities this way. And the artists in the communities and the historic sites and our stories and stuff are part of that fabric that enables this to work successfully. So my message is basically, this doesn't mean we're going to end up more in debt. It means actually if we double down on supporting it and following the law, we create a more stable legal environment for international investors. A lot of them are really not sure it's safe to come here and do work if they're going to get protesters all the time, or they're going to get treaty rights lawsuits aimed at them. It could just wipe things out, and that's not safe for anyone. So,
Mr. Smith, we're going to have to. The time for questions has expired, and I've given you a couple extra minutes. Is there anything you'd like to say just to sum up?
I'm very grateful for the privilege to speak here. I'm very grateful we still have a democracy and that you're doing your job and you're listening. And I really hope that the information that you're getting from everyone will encourage everybody to be brave and pivot. Bill 198 needs to be revised really fast. Otherwise, we could be going down the Trump road, and we don't want to go down that.
Ms. Smith, thank you very much for your contribution today.
Thank you.
Anyone can speak positively about the remedy, we need more of that, and we appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you very much. We'll call upon our next witness, Berkeley State. Is Berkeley here? Yes. Welcome to Public Bills. We appreciate you coming on today. We're sorry we're a bit late. We got up to a bit of a late start. Could you please introduce yourself, indicate any organization you are representing, if any? That'll be followed by a 5-minute presentation and 5 minutes of questions from MLAs. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning. My name is Berkeley State. I am a resident of Nova Scotia, and I'm speaking today just as a private individual. So I've got 3 of the clauses from the bill that I'd like to speak to today, each of which I see as illustrating one part of a concerning larger story. So, part 1, creating a problem. This pertains to Clause 64 concerning the dissolution of the Bridge Commission. I'll begin with the questions this raises for me. Why end this ongoing revenue source? Why absorb the debt of the Bridge Commission? And why does this seem like a step away from public management and a future excuse to support the quiet advancement of untendered contracts? This government has a poor track record when it comes to spending outside the budget, which you well know as a workaround to avoid the legislative review and approval process. If you add up this spending, the cost of these changes to Halifax's bridges, and the uncalled for HST cut, you arrive at a figure nearly double this year's stated deficit. If you take those away, suddenly this austerity-demanding budget crisis suddenly evaporates. None of this needs to happen, and the numbers don't lie. This critical moment is an entirely fabricated one. So, what motivation could anyone have for creating a problem like this? That question I'll take a shot at answering. Part 2, making the people you don't like pay for it. This pertains to Clause 110 and the levy on electric and hybrid vehicles. So I bought a hybrid 6 years ago. I take good care of it. It takes care of me. And together we try to ask a little less of the earth and the air, those things around us. But somehow that doesn't sit well with this government. In the balance of all things that cost and save the province money, the addition of a biannual levy on electric and hybrid vehicles is hard to read as anything other than punitive. Then when I look at the cuts made to arts, culture, and heritage, I see a pattern emerge. In both of these cases, the numbers don't add up. When every dollar granted to the arts generates $4.50 in revenue, and every electric or hybrid that replaces a gas vehicle reduces the need for spending on resource extraction and environmental cleanup, both would look to me to be obvious good investments. Is it something in the optics that doesn't work for this government? Average Nova Scotians are not oil stakeholders. They're not foreign investors. They're not big business. They're not your chums. They're beneath you. They're meaningless. And so you invent new spin to justify wringing the life out of us while telling us we should be grateful. It doesn't make sense. Part 3, forcing it your way. This pertains to Clause 106 and the collapsing of provincial park matters under a single minister. So the further that this government consolidates power, the more that safeguards and accountability fall away. How will this proposed minister ensure equitable access to our provincial parks? How can we be sure they won't permit commercial development like the golf course repeatedly proposed at West Mabu? With this clause, as well as the others, my fundamental question to you is this: who do these changes remove power and agency from? Even the inclusion of these items in an omnibus bill is an underhanded way to minimize depth and degree of public engagement. And the government has gone ahead and rushed the budget through yesterday while the gallery was closed to the public. The fact that this
You have
bill
1 minute left.
Thank you. The fact that this bill contains numerous items of financial impact, and yet the budget passed ahead of it, well, it suggests that this whole process, these spaces, these roles are a bit performative. So what is it we are doing here? This bill, and moreover, the budget, is not a mandate from the public. To suggest that it is an act of self-delusion and a lie to your constituents. If you cannot be accountable to us, you cannot represent us. I'll close my remarks with a quotation from a friend of mine. I was describing to them how the budget passed yesterday in barred chambers and over the shouts of the crowd outside, and what they said was as applicable to that as it is to this bill. Imagine still believing you were doing the right thing if that's how you have to get it done. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. MLA Lachance.
You mentioned the Provincial Parks Act changes and how, some of those changes. Could you talk more about your concerns about the Provincial Parks Act?
Berkeley. Oh, I just have to recognize you. Berkeley.
Okay. Yes, I'm not directly involved in the provincial parks, but my concern is one of management, accountability, and the opportunity for oversight, review, and generally like a sense of can we collect input and perspective from all stakeholders in making decisions and changes to the way the provincial parks are governed. And what I fear is that in collapsing these into the responsibility of a single minister, that reduces the amount of engagement and ultimately perspective that factors into these decisions.
MLA Wozni.
Just a little bit more on the amendments to the Provincial Park Acts that are part of the current FMA. It empowers the minister to sort of authorize, to set rates and fees and things like that, and then any other it uses language something to the effect of any other rate or license. How concerned are you that the language proposed flings open the gate wide for a minister with total control over provincial parks to unilaterally decide to, say, offer a 99-year lease on lands that are provincial parks to private development of the sort that was sort of scrapped at West Mabou Beach Provincial Park through public outcry?
Berkeley?
Yes, that is really getting the heart of my concern, is that giving these sweeping powers to a minister does open that up. And I think the language as it is in the bill is not accidental. I think it is written in such a way as to open up those possibilities. And fundamentally, that is not what I want. I don't believe that is in the best interests of Nova Scotians. I don't believe that is thinking in the long term. I don't believe that is in keeping with the central purpose of our maintaining and preserving provincial parks and our natural spaces. So to answer your question directly, I am deeply concerned. I think that does open up a great deal of vulnerability for these delicate and deserving of protection natural spaces.
Thank you very much for presenting today at Public Bills. That concludes the questions from the MLAs.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Tiffany Nickerson. Okay. Do we have Melissa Laverdure? I apologize if I've mispronounced your last name. Okay. Yes. So if you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you'd like to be addressed and any organization you might represent. You will have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you so much. It's my first time coming here and presenting. I'm Melissa Laverdure, and I'm a resident of Spryfield. And can I start?
You can start,
okay.
Yes.
I'll just read from this. It's just a letter that I've been hanging on to over the last week or so. My name is Melissa Laverdure. I live and work in Spryfield. I'm a business owner in the film industry. I've read Bill 198 and the Financial Measures Act, and that's why I'm here. The Nova Scotia government's behavior has felt erratic, confusing, and short-sighted. It's landed the main characters booed off stage and talked about on red carpets to reconsider. People are criticizing this leadership style and likening it to that of the con man south of us. I'm here for 3 separate reasons. The first is that after reading this bill, I do not feel the land is being considered or protected from an environmental perspective. Ending community easements in particular was an element that seemed really careless and confusing to me, as well as the changes to the Crown lands. Secondly, I want to say, as someone who spends a huge chunk of my life in niche libraries, that it has felt really hurtful and insulting to watch my fellow library workers in rural areas talking about being devalued and the closure of their collections, livelihoods, loss of community space, loss of tourists, and loss of historical preservation. Lastly, the cuts to programs, and in particular arts funding, is my third major concern here. To me, the arts in Halifax is a big part of what keeps me here. I've lived here for the last 20 years. They make this space unique. They make this place unique. I go see artists work in about 10 different galleries and nonprofit spaces around town. I take in extraordinary performances at theaters, learn new art forms, hear commentary from our community, reconnect with friends, and make new ones. We make movies together. We tour around, spending all of our money here. In my opinion, the arts should be further funded, and it's currently underfunded in Nova Scotia. I've heard, as I'm sure you all have too, that the arts in Nova Scotia is a growing sector in Nova Scotia, bringing in considerable revenue. I don't think you should be conducting a financial review and looking at our budget without considering historical preservation, the arts, and the environment. It would be like planning a school curriculum and taking out languages, history, the arts, and physical activity. To me, the most hurtful part of this bill and act is that I feel a push towards meaninglessness, where people and the planet have no perceived value and therefore are not a factor in the equation. The arts are of value. History and museums are of value. Grants to language programs are of value. Grants to having a living here are value. Films are valuable. The woods and the waterways and the animals that live here with us are of value. I ask that you have courage to act with integrity when thinking about our future. A whole life is not spent in front of a calculator. Please consider making this place one that we care about and one that supports and even celebrates an engaged community mind.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Melissa. MLA Lachance.
Thank you. You mentioned that you've had some questions or concerns about the easements portions, and I'm wondering if you could talk about this. You just need to wait to be acknowledged so that your mic turns on.
I recognize Melissa.
Thank you. Yeah, the easements is something that I've been hearing a lot about and reading a lot about, and it feels like, I don't know, this erasure of protected space. It feels like with the easements going away, that potentially trails and parks, and then all of the things that live there are not being represented. So I don't really understand the purpose of the easements thing, and it feels just, yeah, it just feels confusing and disrespectful. I'm not sure what the purpose is. Yeah, I think like a lot of the elements actually of this bill were confusing to me, and they kind of just gave this feeling like there's these other undermining reasons that are ultimately like disrespectful to people and the environment.
MLA Wozni.
Melissa, thanks for presenting. Congrats for breaking the ice. It would be nice if people didn't need to show up here and express concerns about legislation because it was well formed, based on consultation, and people understood its purpose. But thank you for your courage and principle in being here. I don't sense in you any reticence to consider changes to law if those changes are presented on the foundation of a strong, I guess, I hesitate to use the word business case because I take your point that one of the shortcomings of the FMA is it seems to only consider the dollar value of things and not the value and cost of things beyond that in terms of human and social capital. But as a Nova Scotian, as a citizen, you took the time to read this bill. It's a big one. There's 20 different laws amended by it. What have you heard from the government so far by way of a compelling case for the changes contained within? And what do you think of the rationale that's been offered so far?
I recognize Melissa.
Thank you. I'll just speak from my heart because that's where I'm really coming from here today, is that, like, for me, it feels like taking away a bunch of stuff from people and then giving back half of it. And then it really almost feels like this Nova Scotia thing for that to be okay. Like, to be like, well, look, we might have been really injured, but we're still alive. And I just feel like that's what it feels like to me. Like, I don't feel like it's a good plan. I don't feel a good, like, I think, like I said, I really feel like I feel like there should be more funded programs, and those programs help make this place this place.
I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing with Public Bills today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Our next presenter is virtual, and do we have Liz Crocker on the line? Liz, can you turn on your microphone?
I have turned it on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you could please and I can see you now. If you can please introduce yourself and indicate how you would like to be addressed and any organization that you may represent. You'll have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions.
Thanks very much. I'm Liz Crocker. I live in East Chester. You can call me Liz, and I don't represent any organization in particular, but in my presentation, I will tell you some of the experience I have that makes me want to come here today.
Thank you, Liz. If you could start your presentation. Thank you.
So the presentation I had has changed because here we are. The bill that we are commenting on has passed. So it is going to be maybe not as tight as it might have been. So I just want to say why I decided to put my name forward to say something. I have lots of experience in the arts and culture sector. I've been associated in one way or another with Neptune Theatre, Shakespeare by the Sea, Halifax Dance. I sing in choirs. I was co-chair of the Chester Playhouse for a number of years. I'm an author. I'm an artist. I'm an editor. I've also been very involved in environmental issues, EAC, Natural Step Canada, Eco-Justice. I've chaired an economic development task force, and I've owned a business for 47 years consecutively, and 2 other businesses for a total of 25 years. So I've got 72 years of business experience behind me. And I say all that because I get it. Trying to put together a budget for something this complex as a province is hard. And it's all about choices. And choices are hard to make. And whenever you make a choice to spend something or to not spend something, or whenever you make a choice to spend something, you're also at the same time making a choice to not spend something, and vice versa. So I realize all of that is hard. So I have some empathy and compassion for the task. What I don't have empathy and compassion for, though, are some of the choices that have been made and the style in which they've been made. So there's no point today going over all the things that I am concerned about that have been cut, because you've heard about those from many, many people with data and evidence and charts to say you're making a cut, but you're also, because you're cutting something that's a revenue generator, you're cutting revenue. And did you think about that? I'm not going to say all that because you know it. So I'm going to talk about the cuts you've made just quickly that I question: arts and culture, tourism, libraries, bus passes for youth when we're trying to develop a culture of sustainable energy use. And if youth who've been using bus passes become adults who use buses, that's a good thing. And it's a small investment. So there are a lot of the whats that I don't like. And there's also the hows. My understanding is that the entire Department of Wildlife Protection was eliminated, and those staff, dedicated scientists and managers, were given 2 hours to leave their offices. That's not Nova Scotian. That's not humane. That's not respectful. So let me say a little bit more about how. There is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. This budget to me is an example of having gone fast and not together. So you may get far, by going fast, you may find that you are alone. And this is, I think, maybe the greatest damage of this budget from my point of view. All the individual points are valid and they're hurtful.
You have 1 minute left.
And thank you. They don't make sense. As somebody said earlier, you do the math and you cut things that generate revenue. Has anybody looked at the implications? Did anybody consult? But my concern because you've gone so fast, it looks like there hasn't been consultation. It looks like from the minister's response to questions, they don't have any evidence for the decisions that they're responsible for. They're not convincing people that they make sense. People have been insulted. We've been told that we're yellers and screamers. And I have listened and read, and I have been so impressed with Nova Scotians who have thoughtfully, passionately come forward with valid points and evidence to back up their points. So there is another expression that I want to share with you, is that when we have to do difficult things, we have to move at the speed of trust. And my fear now is that the government has broken the trust of Nova Scotians. And getting trust back is hard.
Liz.
It's okay. It's okay to change your mind.
Thank you very much, Liz. Before we move to questions, I would just like to clarify that this bill has not passed yet. We're still in the public bills stage of this bill. I recognize MLA Wozni.
Ms. Crocker, thanks so much for your presentation. Listen, as someone who sits in this House who represents a community of folks, I very much take to heart your concerns about how confusing the budget process is for Nova Scotians. On the 25th of February, the Minister of Finance put out a public release that said that legislative amendments are needed to enact the budget in sort of point formed, a whole bunch of changes that are contained in this act. And if you're a Nova Scotian, it looks like, hey, the budget and the Financial Measures Act are sort of sides of the same coin. And then over the course of debate, since its introduction, We have the Speaker of the House and committee chairs telling people that you're not allowed to talk about the budget. You can only talk about the FMA. Those are different things. Here in committee, Legislative Counsel advised witnesses that the Appropriations Act enables the budget, but not the FMA. So I understand Nova Scotians are dizzy. We've seen the Appropriations Pact passed yesterday while the House was closed to the public of Nova Scotia. It's hard for people to follow the bouncing ball of what's in bounds and what's out of bounds in terms of being able to share their concerns about the budget. I'm wondering if, the byline of this budget is defending Nova Scotians. And I'm wondering, given all of the upheaval, given all the mixed messaging that's come from government all along the way about this budget and about this bill, to what degree do you believe the FMA acts to protect Nova Scotians and moves to strengthen the trust necessary between the government and its citizens so that we can move forward in a good way?
I recognize Liz. Oh, I just need to recognize you so that we capture it.
Thanks for your question. And, I do understand that the budget process is complicated. I didn't say in my list of experience that I actually was head of policy and research for a government party, and I know quite intimately what the process is. And so I may have misspoken exactly in terms of whether the legislation has been passed or not. That's not the point of my being here today. The point of my being here today is to say, slow down, take a breath, honor the Nova Scotians who are coming forward with valid points and evidence. It's okay to change your mind. So to the MLA who just referred to the title of the bill, Defending Nova Scotians, I'm an old English teacher, and I would say, defending Nova Scotians from what? Who is our enemy? It seems now, because we have been, I'll just say personally, it feels like the process, it exists, and somebody like me can come forward and I can make comments, but so many other people have written letters, sent petitions, and they're not hearing back from members of the Legislative Assembly. So we feel dismissed. We don't, if you're defending us from something, we don't even know what it is you're defending us from. And as I said, I think the trust has been broken. And in a weird, kind of crazy Machiavellian way, the only suggestion I feel like I can make now, because it's so late in the process game, is that while the government has been criticized by citizens and by the Auditor General for making discretionary expenditures outside of the budget, well, maybe I'll want to encourage the government to make discretionary expenditures to put back in some of the things that have been cut when they actually listen to Nova Scotians and go, you know what? They have a point. We've cut something that's going to reduce our revenue. Makes no sense. It's okay to change your mind. Long answer to a specific question. I apologize.
Well, thank you very much for coming today to present at Public Bills. That concludes this presentation. We will stay virtual. And do we have Vince Calderhead? Okay. Okay. I think Vince is virtual. Oh, okay. Vince, can you check your mic, and will you be putting on your camera today? We can't hear you on this end, Vince. Can you try unmuting yourself?
How's that?
I can hear you. I can see you. We can all hear you and see you now. Thank you very much for joining us today at Public Bills. If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you'd like to be addressed and any organization that you may represent. You will have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questionings or questions.
Right. Okay. Um, s- So am I on now, or will the chair be asking me?
If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you'd like to be addressed, we can start there.
Okay. My name is Vincent Calderhead. I'm a lawyer at Pink Larkin and a longtime human rights and anti-poverty advocate.
Well, thank you for introducing yourself. You will have 5 minutes to present.
All right. I don't know whether the members of the committee have my submission, which I've...
We have your submission.
Okay, thanks very much. I'd like to just really quickly explain the first 5 or 6 pages of it. This is a presentation which I've done on an annual basis, and what it does is set out exactly the incomes of people who are reliant on social assistance, so that anyone looking at that can know how much income people on social assistance receive depending upon their family situation. And so on the first page of the submission, we've set out all the components that go into a social assistance budget, and you'll see those. For example, the standard household rate, which of course is the main component of income for someone on social assistance. This year's budget actually does nothing whatsoever for that. There is an indexation that has taken place, and I note it's 1.6%, which is required by the regulations that were brought in 2 years ago. My main point there is to say, in the government's budget, it actually notes that the forecast increase for the consumer price index for this year is 2%. So there's already a 0.4% loss to people on social assistance, because the government, having raised rates by 1.6%, turns around and says in the budget that it'll be 2%. All of that says nothing whatsoever about the expected spike in inflation, which the war in Iran has resulted in. And so that too now needs to be factored in. I just want to spend 1 minute on, for example, the next page. Insofar as it shows on page 2, you'll see an example of how someone, and these are different scenarios I've set out, and how those work. So the first page on page 2 talks about a single adult without disabilities. On the right-hand column, it shows their monthly total income from the standard household rate, the affordable living tax credit, poverty reduction credit, $800 per month, 800.92 per month. Add another approximately $30 for GST, bringing it to a total monthly income of $830. That's it. And so as a result, that comes out to $99.67 per year. And look at how that compares to Canada's official poverty line, which is the amount of money that someone needs to live a basic, modest income. This is a poverty line that applies all across Canada. 35% of the poverty line. This budget does nothing to alleviate that whatsoever. I want to then skip ahead, because of the time limitations, to the situation on page 4. That's to say, a single adult with disabilities. On page 4, you'll see that the standard household rate, combined with something called the disability supplement for a person with disabilities on income assistance, brings their monthly income to $1,346. And if you skip down and see their total monthly income, it's $1,446, or on an annual basis is $17,354. And again, if you go to the bottom line, this brings them to 61% of the Canada's official poverty line.
You have 1 minute remaining, Vince.
Hello?
You have 1 minute remaining, Vince.
Thank you. So let me skip now to page 7 of the presentation, and you'll see how I have on page 7, I've put forward a list of all of the family scenarios. Every single one is in deep poverty. What I would ask this committee to look at is, insofar as you're looking at changes to the Income Tax Act, or that's part of the bill before you, is if there were amendments made to free up more money for social assistance, then there could be an important change towards ensuring that Nova Scotians living in poverty have the right to an adequate income. The last thing I'll touch on is the poverty reduction credit, which was announced in this budget. And it's financed under the income tax legislation, I think. And so it's been announced there's a 20% cut in that into this budget. Who is it who's being impacted by that? Given the $16,000 per annum threshold, which has not been indexed since 2018, it's people with disabilities.
Okay.
As you'll see from my
Thank you. That does conclude your time, but sometimes MLAs are okay to let you wrap up. Would you like to take 30 seconds to wrap up? Okay.
What I'm saying is, if you look at the total annual income of someone with disabilities, it's $17,000, which by definition makes them ineligible for the poverty reduction credit. So that's how we know that 20% of the PRC will be saved this year. It's because the threshold has not been indexed in 8 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Vince. We're going to move to questions. MLA Taggart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vince, for your presentation. I've been in these hearings before when you were here, and I appreciate the work for sure that you do in advocating for those living in poverty. What I want to ask, though, is, and so the Chair said, you know, if there was more, you know, if you had more to say, I'm very happy to hear it, but I'd like you to tie it to this actual bill, the Bill 198. Is there anything like, so we're not debating the budget, or this committee is not here to you know, for the to discuss the budget. It's here to discuss specifically Bill 198, which is a very far-ranging bill. You know, certainly there's a lot of issues in it, but I'd like to know, like you know, if you've got something specific to the Financial Measures Act, I would love to hear it. Thank you.
Oh, I just need to recognize you, Vince. I recognize Vince.
The Income Tax Act is implicated in this bill, and changes to the Income Tax Act, which could be directed towards the alleviation of poverty, are squarely before the committee. And by indexing the poverty reduction credit, it would bring back into eligibility so many people with disabilities who otherwise are vulnerable and will be hurt by the budget's failure to make those kinds of changes to the Income Tax Act.
MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm wondering if you might elaborate further on the absence in the FMA of changes that would address your concerns around people basically becoming ineligible for the poverty reduction credit and special diet allowances because the base rates there's been no indexing of those base rates. I'd like to hear more about that from you.
Vince? Oh, let me just there you are.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Vince.
The poverty reduction credit, the eligibility threshold for that credit is for people in income assistance whose incomes do not exceed $16,000 per year. That threshold was established years ago, and in 2018, I believe. And if it had been properly indexed, those people who with disabilities who are among the most vulnerable in Nova Scotia will be hurt by the failure by the province to index that rate. Had it been properly indexed, it would be around $20,000 per year, and they would be eligible. On the special diet rates you asked about, the minister spoke to the Committee on Supply and the other day, and in her submission, she mentioned that special diet allowances are one of the measures that the province relies on to alleviate poverty, to lift people out of poverty was her expression. What she didn't mention is that those special diet allowances were introduced in 1996. The materials I've included with my submission makes clear that those rates, I think it's 17 of the 18 rates, have not increased by 1 penny since they were introduced in 1996. In other words, 30 years ago, the rates have not been increased by a cent. And those are people with special health or medical conditions who are by definition vulnerable and will be hurt by the continuing failure to bring those rates into line with actual costs.
Okay, thank you, Vince. MLA Lachance, we have about 40 seconds.
Okay. Vince, your notes also talk about the affordable living tax credit. Can you just talk about that?
Go ahead, Vince.
Not been adequately indexed. It has not been increased since 2011, meaning 15 years ago. And so in that time, inflation has eroded the value of that by 40%. So if the province were genuinely interested in those kind of poverty alleviation measures, they ought to be properly indexed.
Thank you very much for your presentation today, Vince, and for your handout. We do appreciate you coming to speak at Public Bills.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is virtual again. Do we have Alison Outhit? I think we're just waiting for our technology to connect. Hi, Allison. We can see you. Can you check your mic to make sure we can hear you? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Here I am.
Okay, we can hear you and we can see you. If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you'd like to be addressed today and any organization that you may represent.
So my name is Alison Outhit. My pronouns are she, her, and I don't need a title, so Alison is just fine. And I represent myself.
Well, thank you very much, Allison, for coming to present today. You'll have 5 minutes for your presentation, followed by 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I've worked in the cultural industries my whole career. I managed the artist Aquaculture, whose album 1783 dropped last month, and it's an incredible work, a cultural milestone about finding connection through heritage and community. As a descendant of Black loyalists. So that's just a little promotion there, but it's relevant. If you check your inbox, you'll have an email from me explaining in detail why investing in aquaculture and the arts is socially and economically smart. Setting that aside, I'm here for my 2 grandchildren. I want to embody the saying that we don't inherit the earth, but we borrow it from them. And I'll speak to several clauses in Bill 198 from that perspective. What kind of world are we trying to make here? In this province, as almost everywhere, we've bound ourselves to the idea that we must have economic growth. That's the promise made by Tim Houston, that he and his policies will grow the economy. And this presupposes that growing the economy is an unassailable net good that everyone can get behind. And if true, then politics is just a matter of working out whom that growth benefits, and sometimes it's us and sometimes it's them, but the growth cycle must spiral on regardless. But the thing is, this is a finite planet and a finite province. It's only as big as it is, and it only has the resources that it has. And you can't have infinite growth with finite resources. It's just logically not possible. And this reality informs the basis of degrowth economics, which provides well thought out strategies in every field, whether it's science or economies, or agriculture or politics or the arts, for moving away from constant growth as the goal toward equity and sustainability. And we're now in a phase of late-stage neoliberal capitalism where those who hold power, which are big corporations and billionaires and the politicians that they keep, are nudging us or outright shoving us toward authoritarianism with the goal of keeping the constant growth crazy train on the tracks, which is to their benefit and not to ours. And we've seen this in the prior behavior of this government and in Bill 198, notably clauses 52 to 55 on conservation easements, which undermine their permanence and use the threat of increased taxes to force an end to private conservation measures. Clause 93, which gives the province ownership of all the gypsum deposits without recourse to any form of compensation. And let's note that gypsum and uranium are often found together, so there's probably a uranium mining play in there and I don't know who wants that. Clause 110, the EV tax, which will certainly act as a disincentive for private citizens to curb their own environmental impact. And Clause 67, extending the capital investment tax credit for large-scale manufacturing, processing, and extraction type projects. These broad tax credits return a lower ROI for the province compared to direct spending on government services because they tend to be pocketed by those large corporations rather than spent locally. And that begs the question. Given that the province's own data shows that direct spending on arts, culture, and tourism has proven solid and growing ROI, why did you cut it? Especially when these cuts have a negligible impact on the deficit. So looking at the totality of the Financial Measures Act, plus the nonsensical budget cuts, plus closing the House against the people, which wasn't cool, you have to conclude this is ideologically driven, and that the Premier seeks to thwart the emerging realization that the welfare and the well-being of this province are tied to growing the economy, not by actual collective good, but by political force.
You have 1 minute remaining.
And put more simply, these actions are taken to stop us from acting in community and in solidarity to make a world that our grandchildren can thrive in. So let me just finish by saluting the folks up in the gallery and all the speakers before me who nevertheless persisted. And let me echo what they sang. It's okay to change your minds. And for the sake of our grandchildren, I hope that you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We will now move to MLA questions. MLA Lachance.
Sure, I'll hop in. Thank you for your presentation. And you talked a lot about sort of the environmental costs of this budget. I'm wondering if you wanted to just expand a bit more on specific measures in the FMA that you're concerned about with regards to environmental costs.
Allison? Let me just recognize you. Okay. That's okay. I recognize Allison.
Thank you. As I mentioned, the conservation easement clauses 52 to 55, which have a tendency to undermine their permanency. I'm concerned about the EV tax, and I'm also concerned about the capital tax investment tax credit, which is, I think, fairly typically going to be aimed at large-scale extraction type of projects. So those are my concerns.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming and presenting at Public Bills today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Our next presenter is Reverend Beth Hayward. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you'd like to be addressed and any organization you may represent.
Certainly. I'm the Reverend Beth Hayward. My pronouns are she and her. I'm here as a private citizen today, and you're most welcome to address me by my first name.
Thank you very much. You will have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions.
Okay. So the bill has passed, and I know that, and I'm here anyway. I'm here because I believe that witness matters, even after a vote has happened. I'm the lead minister at Bedford United Church.
I just want to clarify that this bill has not passed.
Yeah,
We're
so
still at the public
the
bill
enabling
stage.
bill, and 198 I know is still
So that, and that's the one we're speaking on today. Okay, thank you.
So I'm lead minister at Bedford United Church, and I'm not representing them today, but I deeply carry them with me. For 25 years, I've sat with people at the hardest moments in their lives, walked through that with them, and I know what it looks like when someone is told that their life is worth less than a budget line. The night before last, when people came to Province House and wanted to be heard, they sang. And they filled the house with song, as we all know, and the response from the house the next day was to lock the doors. And I don't want us to brush over that image, because I do wonder if a government afraid of song is a government that has lost its way. I want to tell you about a retired couple in my congregation. They've provided round-the-clock care for over 40 years for their disabled son so that he can live at home and with dignity, so they can save the taxpayers some money. Our own MLA in Bedford, Mr. Outhit, has probably met Graham because he comes to all of our community meals, and I'm holding up a picture of him and I
don't think we can have props here. Thank you.
So when the amount that his family receives of $400 a month for a caregiver benefit was threatened and proposed to be cut simultaneously with defunding programs, his parents spent weeks in a state of anxiety, becoming political protesters for the first time in their lives. That's not their natural way of being. They made calls, they showed up, and they fought. And when the cuts were reversed, the insinuation was, you should be grateful. I want you to know that those parents still feel gutted and betrayed. And even the reversal, they tell me, has not left them with faith that this government won't try again next year. They're not relieved. They cannot rest. And they are one family amongst 3,000 in this province. They should not have been forced to fight in the first place. Bill 198 contains 200 changes to 20 separate pieces of legislation bundled into one vote. And it was not designed for scrutiny. It was passed with the Premier absent, with the Finance Minister absent, while the public was locked outside. I want to ask what the legislature is for, if not for citizens, to be represented, to be in conversation with their elected representatives. But the doors were closed. I know some faces in this room. I know my MLA in the Quinpool neighborhood. I know my MLA in Bedford. I know. I've shaken your hands. I know that you all in this room, even those I don't know, genuinely believe that you care about your communities. And that's precisely why I'm asking you, not as a constituent addressing representatives, but as a neighbor speaking plainly to neighbor.
You have 1 minute remaining.
What do you say to those parents? What do you say to the organizations who will be losing grants that allow them to be part of the fabric of our province? What do you say to the people who stood locked outside? They are not our adversaries. They are constituents and neighbors. What story will we tell about this week? What story will you tell? Some bills may have been passed. 198 is still open, and the moral account is certainly still open. And so as a person of faith, my faith tells me how we treat our most vulnerable is a measure of who we are as individuals, communities, and governments. You have an extraordinary majority. You can pass almost anything you choose. And so I simply ask you to choose as though you will answer for it to your neighbors, because you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. MLA Taggart.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to bring some clarity here. So I, like you, am disappointed that that at this time, people are not visitors are not allowed in the gallery. I actually believe that that's one of our real principles, and I think most everybody does. The reality is, the singing in the legislature was nice. It was. It drowned out. The work of the legislature couldn't continue because of the singing. That was fine, but it's the actions that took place afterwards that I believe, anyway. It was the decision was made by the speaker and the clerk, right? But there was a lot of stuff that wasn't.
MLA Wozni.
The chair has insisted that questions coming from opposition members be framed through the lens of the FMA. I'm unclear as to the current speaker's comments for the witness are in any way related to the content of the FMA. If we're going to be told that our comments have to be based in the FMA, then that standard should be applied to comments and questions from government side members of the committee as well.
Can you please tie that to the FMA, MLA Taggart?
So as you were speaking to the FMA in this meeting today, you referred about your disappointment. And so I just need to say there was a lot of things that happened other than the singing. Just need to make that clear. You know what I mean? And that's what's resulted in people not being able to be in the House to hear the discussion and the debate about the FMA. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize Beth.
I was at the gatherings outside the legislature 2 times before in the past several weeks. My experience is when people have felt unheard on the the Financial Measures Act, and therefore they came to the legislature to continue an effort to be heard because citizens do not feel like they've been heard fully. It would be my hope that our government would hold to the highest standard that piece of the House being the people's house. And absolutely, if people were acting outside of the law or in a harassing manner, I would hope that those individuals would be addressed appropriately by the law. I expect that others in the gallery were there for their voices to be heard, and that is, the rest of us should not have been shut out for that behavior.
Okay, thank you. And MLA Wozni?
The presentation of the FMA and the mental gymnastics involved in what we're allowed to say about it as MLAs, what the public is allowed to say about the FMA as part of the formal process of the House has been enormously difficult. The goalposts keep moving from day to day about what we're allowed to say, what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. What is the impact for Nova Scotians who simply want to speak and be heard about the impact of this legislation in terms of trusting that government has their best interests at heart and whether or not they are being defended by this legislation and the budget which it's tied to?
That's okay. I just need to recognize you with 1 minute left.
I can speak to my own experience. When I called a few weeks ago to the Legislative Council office to be put on this list, I was sent away to come back with precisely the point in the bill that I wanted to address. I'm not a lawyer. I spent 2 to 3 hours reading the bill. Couldn't find precisely what I wanted to address. So when I did call back, I was eventually, they gave me a spot. I then had to advocate for myself to actually be sure I was on the list today. I'm highly educated. I'm highly connected. I throw my title around in moments like this only because I hope that in some place in history, people will take it seriously. But I'm well aware that there are people in my congregation and community who were simply hit by roadblocks, which made them feel I won't be heard, and they gave up trying to speak because they didn't have the time and the energy and the wherewithal to figure out the system with the changing goalposts.
Thank you very much for coming here today and sharing with Public Bills.
Thank you for having me.
Our next presenter is Ken Summers.
Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for coming today. If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you would like to be addressed and any organization that you may represent.
Well, I'm Ken Summers, and before I put my reading glasses on, I look around and see who I know in the room. I know Tom. That's it. The rest of you I sort of recognize, but Tom's the only one I know. My name is Ken Summers. I'm here representing NoFrac and as a member of the East Hants Fracking Opposition Group. We formed over a dozen years ago to ensure that fracking did not return to our communities of Kennecott and Knoll.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to remind the room that we are here speaking on the FMA, so if you could just make sure that your comments are tied to the bill that we're discussing, that would be helpful. You'll have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions.
Okay, I'm speaking to clauses 52 through 61, 93 through 98, clause 107, and clause 110 of the Financial Measures Act. I note also that clauses 2 through 51 contain a great deal of the enabling details for those said clauses. Now, those clauses of the Financial Measures Act, taken together, are part of a concerted attack on things dear to Nova Scotians, but which this government has decided need to be sacrificed on the altar of making Nova Scotia safe for mining and fracking. Those clauses of the FMA are of a piece with the budget tabled, 2 long weeks ago now. Who knew that the election of 2024, that up for re-election, was a different version of Tim Houston? That Houston 1.0 was already history. Houston 2.0, we found out, was to be about pushing natural resource extraction at any cost. The abrupt need for this was explained as something made necessary by slowing growth and the effect that was having on government revenues. And what was one of the very first feature acts of Houston 2.0? Tax cut. And financed by increasing debt and deficit. Brilliant. Next up, get impediments out of the way of increasing resource extraction, which this bill has many clauses contributing to. Fracking and uranium mining moratoriums, gone. Which brought me to this same room last year. While claiming that moratoriums are lazy policy, the Premier breathlessly issues edicts after zero policy discussion. Who knew then how frequently we would be hearing that Daddy knows best? Anyway, moratorium on hydraulic fracturing getting in the way, gone. Open for business now. So the impediments are gone, replaced by the smiley face sign, but no one is interested in trying fracking here again. No problem. We can cover 100% of their drilling and fracking costs. Another brilliant move. Take $30 million, for starters, from community groups who work hard to maximize bang for buck on tax dollars used, and give it to the frackers. And let's put lipstick on this pig by calling it All Research and the Study Program, and by blackmailing Dalhousie University into being the administrative face of this abomination. The only studying going on will be the fracking spending our money on test wells to see if they want to go for a full-scale shale gas producing field. It will certainly help that the frackers can see that this government would be open to subsidizing that as well. And what exactly do those antiseptic words, producing field, mean in real life? Well, almost 20 years ago, the last frackers, Triangle Petroleum, were projecting 250 wells shoehorned into 50 square kilometers.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Where I live. I might need 10 seconds extra. Several hundred to 1,000 of us live there, where these 250 wells were to go. Let alone the air and water pollution, we are expected to live in a thoroughly industrialized landscape knitted together with relentless truck traffic. Nobody voted for this assault on our way of life. And then there are those gas plants. Our amount of wind-generated power is thankfully growing, and we do need backup for when the wind does not blow. Our non-independent energy system operator acts as if these gas plants are the only thing that will fill that need. It's the Houston government that has made sure that battery storage has kept out of the process, because bad gas plants' costs and their effects on power rates would not look good in a rigorous comparison to large-scale battery storage. We already know the lengths Tim Houston will go to bring fracking back, and a large new demand for fossil gas would not hurt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to MLA Taggart.
Thanks, Chair, and hello, Ken. I'm glad you brought up the 20 years ago. I was wondering how long ago it was. That's when. 18. Okay, that's when Ken and I first met, and I chaired the committee that turned down. They had that big pond of fracking fluid in Kennecook, and municipality Colchester turned down permitting for it. So that's so I certainly. I've tried to understand fracking and that. I guess the end, Ken, I'll just say I look forward to we meet at some point on the Moose Corridor, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a discussion on that. But what I do want to say is that it's my personal belief, and I don't hide from that our natural resources are what made this province and this country. And if there's ways and there was lots of mistakes made back then, but if there are ways to extract our natural resources responsibly and grow the economy and the prosperity of the people in our province, then that's something that I'll support. But I look forward to you and I having the discussion on fracking. Thank you.
Please do. Ken, please respond. Your mic's on now, Ken.
Okay. As Tom mentioned, if. Yes, that's the big question of the if, how natural resources are extracted. I'm all, I believe we will continue to be focused on natural resource extraction. It's how we do it. and that's a discussion for another time.
MLA Wozni, who's passed it on to MLA LaChance.
In terms of so-called natural gas, methane gas, previously was viewed as some sort of transition away from other types of fossil fuels. But I would say that we've passed that transition point, and that our natural resources in wind, in particular, far outpace what can be done reasonably in this province with methane extraction. I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about, like, if you agree with that statement, and why is wind better for communities than other options?
I recognize Ken.
Okay, well, yes, there's actually not really a debate about wind power. We're getting more wind power. I would suggest that we are not doing enough. And ironically, if I can go back, our premier is talking about Wind West, which is great. That's offshore, that's distant. Wind power is difficult to make happen. It's now profitable. Profitable is not the problem, but it's tricky getting wind farms through the gauntlet. And Houston 1.0 actually did a lot of good work on making that less of an obstacle. They didn't blow their horn about that at all, No, we jumped to mining instead. But anyway, so yes, wind power can, but the thing where the gas plants comes in is wind power alone will not do it. There does have to be backup. The government, through the non-independent energy system operator, is putting this forward as if it has to be gas plants, for all intents and purposes. We don't get a rigorous comparison to battery plants as an option, even though battery plants are more developed here than gas plants are. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much for coming today to Public Bills and sharing your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Michelle Peters. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you could please introduce yourself and indicate how you would like to be addressed, and if you represent an organization.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Peters. Waleexabuk, Delewe Pictolanning, Pictugawa. I'm from Pictolanning First Nations. I'm here to represent myself as an organization, as a clinical specialist. My business is known as Etley in Pacific, and I provide counseling, crisis supports, education, and consultation throughout Mi'kmaq. And you can just address me as Michelle Peters, please.
Okay, thank you very much. You will have 5 minutes to present, followed by 5 minutes of questions, and I'll give you a 1 minute heads up, okay?
Okay. I'm here this morning because for over 25 years I've been providing various supports to Mi'kmaq people throughout Nova Scotia in various capacities, as an educator, as a clinical specialist, as I worked in employment in training as well, and I've done a lot of work with post-secondary, etc. I've also done a lot of work with non-Indigenous communities in terms of consultation, policy development, ethics, and so forth, working with the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers to help them to create ethical policies and refine their code of ethics so that it was considerate of Indigenous needs and communities. I'm here because some of the decisions under this government really don't make sense to me. I'll just briefly mention the decommissioning of the bridge tolls, and then it feels very heavy being a Mi'kmaq woman right now in Nova Scotia, trying to represent so many people that I get to speak with every single day. Like you, I have many people to answer to try to work with, to try to support. And when I look at this act, it's so many different areas. It's very hard for me to specifically speak to one specific clause. But Mi'kmaq people are being hit from so many various points from this act. As a Mi'kmaq woman myself, I'm a direct descendant of Indian residential schools. I'm also a fourth-year PhD candidate at St. FX studying my PhD. And I just learned even that my program is going to be cut under this government. And thankfully, St. FX has agreed to honor their commitment to current students. So I'm able to continue on in my research. But as a Mi'kmaq woman, my doctoral work is really about trying to develop a really solid framework around what will best help Indigenous communities deal with the effects of colonial violence, intergenerational trauma, poverty, all of these things that intertwine in our communities. And this act, this Financial Measures Act, just hits our community from so many different angles that it's really just hard to. It's really unacceptable, if I'm being honest. And as far as we have come over the years and working towards reconciliation, I just feel that I had to come here and represent the people of my community. So things such as taking the support away from language development. Language is not simply just language, but language is essential to identification and healing And a lot of our people carry shame because they cannot connect to their language. And so taking these fundings away from programs that will foster healing and wellness in our communities is really taking such a step back for our people. And I don't want you to be delusioned, because what happens in our communities is not just isolated to Mi'kmaq communities, but this affects all of us. We are all in this together. We are all treaty people. And so our communities right now are already struggling for generations, trying to heal from things that have happened over the years, such as taking away culture, language, ceremonies, land-based education, things like that. And this Financial Measures Act takes away from the momentum that we have gained together in partnership, in discussions. And as a residential school descendant, I know what it means to have a second chance. I was a teen mom. I got a grade 12 from a GED 12. My mom was a residential school survivor, and we decided to take that journey together. And because of her, and because of so many of that generation of residential school survivors, they helped us to appreciate how important education was. And many of our community members took that support from that generation, and many of us went on to do really great things in our education. I'll just say an example is Escazone has 6 medical students in that community, in medical school, just that one community alone. This Financial Measures Act isn't just about policy. This is affecting families. This is affecting children, and many of you are probably parents, and you guys represent communities. And the harm that is going to continue to happen to our communities won't just be isolated to our communities. These decisions that this government is about to make is not only going to breach all of the treaty responsibilities and the peace and friendship that exists between the communities, but what happens in our community is really going to trickle down to the entire province, and every one of you in the room is going to feel the impact of that. It's not just isolated to our communities.
Thank you very much. We were moving to questions, but sometimes MLAs extend the time. MLA Wozni?
Well, Alan, is there anything that you wanted to have a little bit extra time to wrap up before I ask a question?
Yeah. It's not
just you let the chair recognize you.
I recognize Michelle Peters.
Yeah. We have to understand that these are not just policies. These have real-life consequences. Poverty drives mental health decline. It drives domestic violence. It drives up crime. It drives up many difficult things, poor coping, addictions and stuff, things that I see every single day in my work. It's really hard to carry this burden every day, trying to help my community, trying to help my people. And it's not just an option to do your part to try to ease this burden that we've been carrying for generations. It's something that we all have a responsibility to. And my mom, as a residential school survivor, she's been doing this work for a very long time. But we, as the next descendants, the next generations coming up, we have to pick up our part now and carry this work forward, and that's why I'm here to represent the Mi'kmaq people and all our residential school survivors who came before and spoke on these issues. So, thank you.
MLA Wozni?
Well, Alan, again, as a treaty person, my name in this land only goes back to 1975, and I recognize as a newcomer to these lands that the Mi'kmaq have been here since time immemorial. And then when you speak with the weight of 11,000 years of history of people who are excellent and resilient, who precede the existence of any colonial law. And I carry that with me in the work that I do. One of the things I'm learning as I walk in relationship with Mi'kmaq folk is that settlers are able to compartmentalize. They can look at something like the Financial Measures Act and see it as a piece of legislation separate from the human and social impacts that it creates. But the Mi'kmaq, ingrained in who they are and the way that they show up in the world, find it impossible to separate relationships between actions and impacts, between ideas and the way that the harms that they or the benefits that they can create for community. Bill 198 makes changes. How able are Mi'kmaq folk able to separate aspects of Bill 198, like the changes to the Crown Lands Act and the Parks Act, that seem at face value to build upon changes that this government previously enacted? The finance minister said the quiet part out loud, that they couldn't impound vehicles of land protectors on Crown lands. And that's why these changes are here in this bill. How able are the Mi'kmaq to see this as a bill separate from the harms that it creates for Mi'kmaq people that continue to recover from and reclaim their place as leaders and vibrant members of our community in every respect?
Oh, I just need to recognize you. I recognize Michelle Peters. We just have 1 minute left.
It's impossible to separate us because we sprout from this land. Our genetic memory, all our medicines are tied to this land. So we're not here to cause trouble. We're here because we care about the next generations. When I do my healing work, I'm not only healing my next 7 generations, but I'm healing the 7 generations that came before me. The work that we are carrying forward is so important. Being able to be connected to the land and the water, protecting it is a responsibility that we carry as Mi'kmaq people who sprout from this land. And so when these things happen, it is not isolated incidents. Our communities are so interconnected that what happens in one community is felt in multiple communities. So just yesterday, we had raids in our communities, and the whole community had to come out and protect a community member. This is an action being taken by Tim Houston. Our children, over 350 children in our community, had to witness that. It's terrorizing for our communities what is happening and being hit from multiple points of in this bill. I couldn't even focus on one specific thing because I'm trying to put out fires everywhere I go, and the community is so burdened with trying to sort this out and trying to figure out how we're going to survive. It's really just so targeted. It feels very targeted and intentional. And I'm asking you guys to please listen with your hearts. I'm not here to give you head knowledge. I'm here to give you heart knowledge. I'm trying to educate social workers. I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to be a good citizen. I'm trying to be a good relative. And I ask that you guys do the same and think about how these decisions not only affect our communities, but affect our future together as treaty people. Walaliak.
Thank you very much for coming today. We will now be on recess until 3 p.m.